November 8th, 1945. 11:23 p.m. 20 men climbed out of 4 black sedans on West 142nd Street. Italian men. Soldiers from the Genovese family. Armed with Thompson submachine guns, shotguns, pistols, knives. Enough firepower to take a small fortress. Their target, a brownstone on the corner where Bumpy Johnson was holding a late-night meeting with his lieutenants. The plan was simple. Surround the building, cut off all exits. Go in shooting, kill everyone inside, leave no witnesses. 20 men. Professional killers, every one of them. More than enough to handle one colored gangster and his crew. That's what Vito Genovese had said. That's what they all believed. 3 hours later, only 3 of them would walk away. This is the story of the night the Italians sent 20 men to kill Bumpy Johnson. And learned why nobody ever caught Bumpy Johnson by surprise. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand the context. The war that had been building for months. The shifting power dynamics that made violence inevitable. World War II was over. The soldiers were coming home. The economy was shifting from wartime production to peacetime consumption. And in the underworld, fortunes were being made and lost as the rules changed. Dutch Schultz had been dead for 10 years. Harlem had been Bumpy's territory ever since, an informal understanding between the black operators and the Italian families. They had their turf, Bumpy had his. As long as the money flowed and nobody got too greedy, everyone prospered. But Vito Genovese had just returned from Italy, where he'd spent years hiding from a murder charge. He was ambitious in a way that older bosses like Lucky Luciano and Frank Costello weren't. Aggressive. Impatient. He looked at Harlem's numbers operation, at all that money flowing through black hands, and he asked a simple question. Why are we leaving that on the table? The Harlem numbers generated millions every year. Millions that went to Bumpy Johnson and his organization. Millions that could be going to the Genovese family instead. Vito made overtures, sent emissaries to Bumpy with proposals for partnership, joint operations, shared profits. The language was polite, but the meaning was clear. Give us a piece, or we'll take it all. Bumpy declined, politely at first. He respected the Italian families, had worked with them for years. But Harlem was his. Had been his since he'd driven out Dutch Schultz. Would remain his until he decided otherwise. Genovese sent more emissaries, more proposals, more pressure. Bumpy declined again, less politely. In October 1945, Genovese's patience ran out. He called a meeting of his captains, laid out the situation, explained that this colored gangster in Harlem was refusing to share. Refusing to acknowledge the natural order of things, refusing to understand that Italians ran organized crime in New York and everyone else operated at their pleasure. It was disrespectful, Genovese said, and disrespect couldn't be tolerated. The decision was made. Kill Bumpy Johnson, kill his lieutenants, decapitate the organization, then move in and pick up the pieces. Simple. Efficient. The way these things were supposed to be done. Carmine Persico would lead the team. 20 soldiers, hand-picked for their reliability and their skill at violence. They would hit Bumpy at a meeting scheduled for November 8th. Intelligence said he'd be at the brownstone on 142nd Street, surrounded by his top people. One strike would eliminate the entire leadership. It was a good plan, solid, professional. What Genovese didn't know was that Bumpy had been expecting this for months. Since the first overture, Bumpy had been preparing, not for negotiation, for war. He'd studied Genovese's organization, identified the likely soldiers, tracked their movements, cultivated informants inside the Italian families who owed him favors or feared him enough to talk. He knew the hit was coming, knew approximately when. Knew approximately how many men would be involved, and he prepared accordingly. The brownstone on 142nd Street wasn't just a meeting place. It was a fortress that looked like a meeting place. Over the previous 2 months, Bumpy had quietly reinforced it. Steel plates behind the wooden doors, bulletproof panels in the windows, hidden by ordinary curtains. Multiple escape routes through connected basements that ran half a block in either direction. Weapon caches on every floor. And a network of lookouts stretching for blocks in every direction. Kids on bicycles and old men on stoops, all paid to watch and report. The Italians thought they were walking into a simple meeting. They were walking into a killing floor. 11:15 p.m. A 13-year-old kid named Marcus pedaled his bicycle furiously down 142nd Street. He'd been watching the corner of Lenox Avenue since 9 p.m., $2 in his pocket for the night's work. He'd seen the 4 sedans turn onto the block, seen the men inside, seen the weapons. He reached the brownstone's back entrance in 90 seconds flat, pounded on the door. 4 cars, he gasped when someone opened it. Lots of men. They're coming. They got guns. The message was relayed upstairs. Bumpy received it calmly. He'd been in the middle of discussing a real estate investment with his lieutenants. 7 men around a table, drinks in hand, the picture of casual business. "Gentlemen," Bumpy said, setting down his glass, "we have visitors. Everyone knows the drill." They did know the drill. They'd practiced it 3 times in the past month. In 60 seconds, the brownstone transformed. Lights went out. Men moved to pre-assigned positions on different floors. Weapons came out of hidden compartments, loaded and ready. The building went from casual meeting place to defensive fortification. 2 of Bumpy's best shooters climbed to the roof through an interior staircase. They carried rifles with scopes, positioned themselves behind a low wall that provided cover while offering clear sight lines to the street below. 4 more men took positions at the front windows, crouching below the bulletproof panels, ready to return fire on command. Bumpy himself went to the 2nd floor, where he could see the street through a narrow gap in the curtains. He wanted to watch, wanted to see his enemies walk into his trap, and he picked up a telephone. 11:23 p.m. The 20 Italians were in position. Carmine Persico directed them with hand signals. 4 men covering the back alley. 4 covering each side street. 8 approaching the front door, where they'd use a battering ram to breach and then flood the building with automatic fire. It was textbook. Overwhelming force. No escape routes. Everyone inside would be dead in minutes. Persico gave the signal. 2 men with the battering ram started toward the front door. The first shots came from above. The 2 riflemen on the roof opened up simultaneously, picking off the battering ram team from 40 feet away. Clean headshots. The men dropped before they understood what was happening. Then the front windows exploded outward. Not from bullets going in. From bullets going out. Bumpy's men behind the bulletproof panels, firing Thompson submachine guns into the cluster of Italian soldiers on the front steps. The street turned into a shooting gallery. The Italians had expected to be the attackers. Instead, they were caught in a crossfire, taking rounds from above and ahead, exposed in the open with no cover anywhere. 3 more men went down in the first 5 seconds. 2 wounded, 1 dead. The rest scrambled for cover that didn't exist, firing wildly at the brownstone, trying to find targets in the dark windows. Persico screamed orders: retreat to the cars, regroup, get out of the kill zone. But the cars were 60 feet away, an eternity under fire. The men on the roof kept shooting. Methodical, patient, picking off anyone who showed themselves. The men at the windows provided suppressing fire, keeping the Italians pinned down. In the first 30 seconds, 8 of Genovese's soldiers were down. Dead or wounded, it didn't matter. They were out of the fight. The survivors scrambled toward the side streets. Some tried to advance on the building, thinking they could get close enough to find cover against the walls. The shooters cut them down before they got halfway. One group made it to an alley, pressed themselves against the brick wall, gasping. trying to understand how a simple hit had turned into a massacre. And then they heard it. Sirens. Police sirens. Getting closer. That was the other part of Bumpy's plan. The moment the shooting started, Bumpy had picked up the telephone and called a number he knew by heart. A police captain on his payroll. A man who owed him more favors than could ever be repaid. "Officer down," Bumpy had said. 142nd and Lenox. Multiple shooters. "Send everyone," the police responded in force. Dozens of cars. Overwhelming numbers. "Officer down" was the call that brought everyone, no questions asked. Persico heard the sirens getting closer, saw the squad cars appearing at both ends of the street, saw his men still taking fire from the brownstone, bodies on the ground, blood everywhere. The mission was over. Not just failed, catastrophically failed. And if they didn't run immediately, they'd be arrested along with whatever survivors were left. "Go," he screamed. "Get out. Now." The remaining Italians scattered, running through alleys, abandoning their wounded, abandoning their dead. Just running, the primal instinct for survival overriding everything else. Bumpy watched from the second-floor window, saw his enemies flee, saw the police cars arrive. "Now," he said to his men, "out the back. You know where to go." His people vanished through the basement tunnels, emerging 3 buildings away, melting into the Harlem night. By the time the police entered the brownstone, there was nobody there except bodies and shell casings. The aftermath was a disaster for the Genovese family. Of the 20 men Persico had led into Harlem, 17 were either dead, wounded, or arrested. The 3 survivors, including Persico himself, had escaped through the alleys before the police arrived. The weapons were recovered. The wounded were interrogated. Some of them talked, trying to cut deals, trying to reduce their sentences. They gave up what they knew, which wasn't much, just that they'd been sent to kill someone important. Just that it had gone terribly, terribly wrong. The newspapers called it a gang war. The police called it a massacre. The district attorney called it an opportunity to crack down on organized crime. But nobody could connect it to Bumpy Johnson. His name never appeared in any report. His men were ghosts. They'd fired hundreds of rounds and then vanished like smoke. The brownstone was empty when police arrived, just furniture and bullet holes, and no evidence that anyone had ever been there. The police knew, of course. Everyone knew. But knowing and proving were different things. Bumpy Johnson had defended himself against an assassination attempt and somehow come out clean. No arrests, no charges, not even a serious interview. It was impossible. And yet it had happened. Genovese received the news at his home in New Jersey. 3 survivors, 3 men out of 20, and Bumpy Johnson was still alive, still running Harlem, still untouchable. Persico delivered the report personally, standing in Genovese's living room, bruised and exhausted, explaining how everything had gone wrong. "They knew we were coming," Persico said. "Had to have known. The second we got out of the cars, they opened up. We never had a chance. How did they know? I don't know. But they were ready. Every position covered, multiple shooters. Like they'd been waiting for us." Genovese sat in silence for a long time. 20 men, he said finally. "I sent 20 men. Yes. And 3 came back. Yes." Genovese looked at the wall, at a painting of the Italian countryside that reminded him of home, at a world that made sense, unlike this one. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed, not a happy laugh. A rueful laugh, the laugh of a man who'd just learned an expensive lesson. "That colored fellow," he said, "he's smarter than I thought. Smarter than all of us, maybe. So what do we do now?" Persico asked. Genovese considered the question. He could send more men. 50 this time, 100. Start a full-scale war. Pour resources into taking Harlem by force. But at what cost? How many more soldiers would die? How much attention would that bring from the authorities? And would it even work against a man who'd just turned 20 professional killers into a pile of bodies? Bumpy Johnson had something Genovese hadn't anticipated: intelligence, preparation, the loyalty of an entire neighborhood that would rather die than betray him. You couldn't buy that kind of support, couldn't intimidate it into existence. It had to be earned over years and decades through actions that mattered. "Nothing," Genovese said finally. "Boss, we do nothing. Leave Harlem alone. Let Johnson keep his neighborhood. We'll make our money somewhere else." His lieutenants were stunned. Vito Genovese didn't back down, didn't accept defeat, didn't let anyone beat him without consequences. But tonight, he was doing exactly that. Because Bumpy Johnson had done something nobody else had ever done. He'd made Vito Genovese count the cost and decide it was too high. Word of the failed attack spread through the underworld like wildfire. The Italians sent 20 men to kill Bumpy. Only 3 came back. The story grew with each telling. Details shifted. Numbers changed. But the core message stayed the same. Don't fuck with Bumpy Johnson. For years afterward, Italian mobsters who dealt with Bumpy were careful, respectful. They remembered the 20 men, remembered what happened when you underestimated the gentlemen of Harlem. The brownstone on 142nd Street became legend. People walked past it and whispered the story to their children. Here, this is where Bumpy Johnson held off 20 men. This is where he proved that Harlem was his. Bumpy himself rarely talked about that night. When asked, he'd just smile and change the subject. But once, late in life, he said something to a young associate who'd asked how he'd survived so long in such a dangerous business. "You want to know the secret? There's no secret. Just preparation, just paying attention, just never letting yourself believe you're safe." The night those Italians came for me, I'd been expecting them for 3 months. Had the building fortified, had the lookouts in place, had the escape routes planned, had the police ready to send help the moment I called. They thought they were surprising me, but I'd been waiting for them since the day Genovese came back from Italy. That's how you survive. You don't wait for trouble to find you. You see it coming, you prepare for it, and when it arrives, you make sure you're the one doing the surprising. 20 men came to kill me that night. They had the guns, they had the numbers, they had every advantage. Except one. I knew they were coming. And knowing is everything. November 8th, 1945. 20 men. 4 cars. 1 target. 3 survivors. The night the Italians learned that Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster. He was a fortress. And you don't take a fortress by rushing the front door. If this story of preparation, survival, and the night 20 men learned the hardest lesson of their lives moved you, smash that subscribe button. Drop us, if you understand that victory doesn't go to the strongest, it goes to the one who's most prepared, what would you have done? If you knew 20 killers were coming for you, how would you prepare? Let me know in the comments. More legendary stories coming. Because Bumpy Johnson's survival wasn't luck. It was strategy. And strategy always beats firepower. 20 men came to kill Bumpy Johnson. 3 went home. That's the difference between a gangster and a king.